Define It is the first stage of the project management process. It looks at the project proposal from an organisation, which is when all project aspects are highlighted. Defining the project is one of the most important sections, as it allows organisations to identify the aims and objectives whilst taking into account stakeholders, time, cost, quality, risks, key activities, and all other aspects that go into making up the entire project. When combined onto one, it makes up the entire initial project proposal. This is an early evaluative tool for any project manager, allowing changes and amendments to be made before the project has even begun. Define It looks into two key areas. Firstly, we have stakeholder, strategy, and success. This identifies external and internal stakeholders and identifying the potential success and failure of a project, so an organisation can see whether the project will create a return from their investment. Secondly, we have initial planning, the very first stage of managing a project. In this section, we will be looking at stakeholders, strategy, and success. Within the stakeholder section, we will be looking at different stakeholder groups, what they desire out of the project, how each stakeholder influences the project, and what outcomes their influences will have. Now, to keep stakeholders happy, organisations have to manage strategic choice. But how can organisations achieve short time periods, cheap costing, and high quality, as well as meeting their project objectives? This will be explained using the time, cost, and quality model, also known as the iron triangle. A stakeholder is any party with an interest or power in the project outcome. Most projects will have more than one stakeholder, which often creates conflict as different stakeholders have different outcomes as a result of the project. There are two types of stakeholders. Firstly, we have external stakeholders, who are people outside the project, for example, a customer. Then we have internal stakeholders, who are people associated with the project process, for example, a member of the group or board of directors. So how do you identify stakeholder groups? You have the internal team, which are central to the project. The next level looks at the core externals, who are the people external to the project but who are crucial for the project's success. Ideally, only a few people or groups. The rest of the world is the final layer. The last layer only requires monitoring to ensure new groups that could become stakeholders are considered, but without changes being made to the project. For example, changing responsibilities within two government departments, which changes the nature of the stakeholder environment. Stakeholders want three processes out of the project. They want input, so stakeholders want to have a say on the project proposal as each stakeholder benefits from the project. They also want to be involved and kept up to date through the process of the outcome. However, the project must be kept secret to please core externals such as clients, and also kept away from potential competitors. All stakeholders successful outcome to the project. Each stakeholder will want a different outcome of the project. Different stakeholders will have different needs and wants. So ultimately, each stakeholder will want success, but the board of directors may want to see a slightly different completion to the project than what customers may want. It is up to the project manager to weigh up the needs of the stakeholders and find an appropriate medium. This can be done by looking at the influence of the stakeholders. The influence that a stakeholder has needs to be balanced. Many project managers describe themselves being a mediator between different stakeholders. One approach to explain this is the nature of power or influence a stakeholder has on the project, and the interest or impact of the project on the stakeholder. Firstly, power, which is explained through direct and indirect authority. Direct authority example would be a CEO of the business project, and indirect authorities such as the council. Secondly, interest. How much knowledge does the stakeholder have of the project, and how much influence do they have? This is a power interest stakeholder map. The way it works depends on how much power a stakeholder has, and how much interest they have in the business. For example, the map shows that if the stakeholder has high power and high interest in the business, then they need to be managed closely. Whereas if the stakeholder has low power and low interest, then they purely need to be monitored, as they are not a threat to the project. To link this back to the original stakeholder analysis, your internal team will need to be managed closely, as they will have the most interest within the project, as they are directly involved, as well as having high power levels to influence the outcome. Your core externals, depending on what role they have, will need to be either kept informed or kept satisfied. Examples of core externals could include assistant managers and the council, those not directly involved in the project but still have either high interest or high power. And finally, the rest of the world, as far as the project is concerned, will need to be monitored. This could include further customers the project will open up, or a low-level member of staff who will be influenced slightly by the project. A trade-off is a prioritization of the objectives in a project. There are two occasions where it affects the decisions that are made. Firstly, planning. If one of the decisions made about the project are non-negotiable, then there will be a limit of time and costs that need to be manipulated around this objective. Secondly, will it affect the decisions made during execution? For example, if the most important target of the project is to achieve a certain level of cost performance, then time and quality may need to be compromised so the cost objective is met. A business must determine the nature of the three key objectives. These are cost, quality, and time. The approach explained performance versus conformance. Conformance is needed to the stated objectives, as this is the most important factor to measure success. It is also a measure of the reliability required to the project system. However, a business also needs performance, which is achieving the basic three criteria of cost, quality, and time. As the table shows, measuring performance is trying to achieve the three criteria of the iron triangle as quickly and cheaply as possible, whilst maintaining the highest possible quality. Whereas conformance is trying to achieve the project target of cost, time, and quality, which will be outlined in the initial project proposal. Return on investments is the key criteria that determines what projects go into a portfolio. As a business cannot carry out every project that is proposed, one framework used by many organisations to determine the nature of the return of the investment is a balanced scorecard. A balanced scorecard has 4 sections. Shareholder. So what are the financial benefits for shareholders in the short and long term of the projects? Also, we have customers and suppliers. What benefits will they see, for example, reduced costs? Then we have internally. So how will the project improve our business processes and innovation and learning? So how much will the company learn from the project? These 4 factors create a value proposition to see whether the project is worthwhile to the organisation. Highlighting the benefits is an approach called the benefit mapping, which allows the organisations to check results against the project objectives and determine whether some of the project proposal needs to be changed. To briefly recap then, stakeholders will need to be managed differently based on their needs and wants. In order to apply theory, we can look at the Power Index model. This lists 4 different ways of managing different stakeholders. Those with the most influence over the project will need to be kept satisfied, whereas those distant stakeholders with little say in the outcome will only need to be monitored. The Iron Triangle also provides a project planning tool for PMs. It shows that 3 main aspects that need to be considered. These are cost, quality, and time. It also allows a comparison between performance and conformance. Now, conformance is how the project goes compared to the original objective set. So in other words, did the project conform to the objectives? Performance, on the other hand, will look at the maximum possible benefit the project could produce, as cheap as possible, as quickly as possible, and in the quickest possible time. Why don't you try out a few of the quizzes, crosswords, and word searches that we have created to help reinforce what you have learnt? If you have any questions though, please use our submission box on our home page and we will contact you as soon as we can. Thank you.